Welcome to the channel where all you gotta do is whittle up the motor mount bits. So, kind of been busy doing other stuff, race car stuff, working in the yard, blah 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 blah, no excuses. Getting on CNC working, fixing the lathe. Anyway, so I'm back on the Mustang again. Plus I'm doing a little bit of tidying around the yard. You never know by looking at it, but so I had all this mocked up with the suspension articulating up and down and turning, checking the Geeerman, the bump steer and everything. So this is locked in as close as I can get it to perfection. So now I wanted to get the motor mounts, and there's already pads for the motor mounts down here with the rubber baby buggy bumpers on there, but I needed to make the adapters because this guy is on a 10-degree angle and it's not 10 degrees, you know, perpendicular to the earth. It's like kind of on this angle, which is kind of weird how they did that. I don't know if they were trying to find the make it kind of a dynafocal mount so it rotates about center mass. I don't know what they're trying to do, but anyway, I want to use these because they're nice and light. So this is the contraption that I came up with. So that's the plate. That's part of the motor mount attached to the frame with the bracing. And then there's a rubber baby buggy bumper. This is the motor mount. It's like a molded rubber doodle. And then it has an 8mm thread here sticking out of it about, you know, I don't know, 25 millimeters or something. So I whittle up these guys. I'm going to thread these M10 and that'll go right there like that. And then I got this piece of aluminum, cut it at 10 degrees on my chop saw. I don't think it has to be too accurate. This thing's going to do all the compensating. So that sits in there like that there, and then this thing goes through it like that. That'll thread onto the stud that sticks out of this motor mount. A little nut goes on the bottom here, and then this will just find its happy spot when you tighten it up. The angle will line up, and then there's another little wedge up here that's sitting over by the lathe, and then I'll put a bolt and a washer on top of it. That'll crunch it all together. So everything is looking pretty good. This one's got the little aluminum doodle in there already. And if I had two hands to pick it up, I could throw that other one in there. The other thing I need to do is, for some reason this hole is not centered in this counter bore. So, and I need that hole to be bigger anyway, so I'm going to move it over kind of where that Sharpie mark is to make this this thing kind of sit in the middle. So, and then I'll put the other angle doodle on the top of there, tighten it all down, and then this will be like its final resting spot. I verified that this thing is, when you put the engine block up here and cylinder head, it's got, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch to clear. Actually, it's got like 3/8 of an inch clearance to this guy, which is sticking out. So maybe a 1/2 inch to most of that. And if I need to move it a little bit, I can jiggle it around a little bit, but I think it's pretty close to where I want it. And then the steering rack has got tons of room in here. I don't know, tons of room, quarter inch up and down and back and forth. So as long as this motor doesn't flex more than 1/4 of an inch, we should be happy. So yeah, now it's beautiful 70 degrees, springtime. I can actually start doing some work with, you know, without bundling up and whatnot. So I'm hoping I'm gonna get some more progress happening on this guy. And then the Bronco, about 2 months ago, I thought, you know what, we haven't had an earthquake around here in like forever and a day. So I took it off of the lift. The body was up on this lift. And it wasn't up there all that sturdily. It was just like sitting on some 4x10s. So any earthquake, it would have like kind of been bad. So I just dropped it down to sit it back on the frame. And we had an earthquake, I don't know, 4.9 or something like a month ago. So good thing I did that, or else this thing would have been, well, God, I don't know what it would have done. It wouldn't have been good though. So anyway, the reason I'm talking about this is because I got to get back on this project as well. Because a lot of times I'm stuck. You know, I get to a point on the Mustang where I'm stuck. I can't do anything because I have to order parts and I have to wait a week for the parts. And then, well, I can go to this guy and work on this and then figure out, oh, now I have to order these parts and then I order that. And, so I'm going to kind of play, you know, hopscotch a little bit. So, and the major next thing I have to do on this thing is get the frame welded up. But I wanted to get the front suspension, all that stuff tied in, motor mounts. The transmission's mount's already done. And then I started building the pieces for the rear suspension. But I want to get it on the rotisserie because that one's going to be like a lot of, you know, laying under the car. So if I can roll this thing over, that's going to be way nicer. So, and it's on wheels too. So once this thing is, the frame, the roll cage will be the frame essentially. Once the roll cage is welded in, then this thing will be nice and stiff and I can roll it over and not worry about it flexing and stuff like that, and door gaps and stuff like that. I want to do after all the roll cage is welded in and everything's super stiff, and I don't have to worry about it. A lot of these Mustangs, these old Mustangs, are so flexible. You can't do the door gaps until it's sitting on the ground on the actual tires. Like they're so flexy. So I'm gonna try to remedy that with this swing set in here. So I think that's gonna do it. Like we have that Sonda car, and before that we put a roll cage in a Saab 9000 Turbo, which was the flexiest chassis on the planet. And after we put the roll cage in it was unbelievable, the night and day difference between how it drove. Unbelievable. Like you put giant sway bars on it, because now the body wasn't so flexible, so the itty bitty little, you know, 15, 18 millimeter sway bar or whatever's on that thing actually did its job because the frame didn't twist. And that Sonda, you can't jack up one tire. Like if you jack up the front of the car from the front, both tires come off the ground. Or if you jack it up from the side, you get both of them. So anyway, that's my plan here, is to get this thing, yeah, all the roll cage tubing welded on, and then I can start putting the roof and panels and all that stuff. But I think I got it kind of close to where everything needs to be. But I gotta weld these little plugs in here first before I can put the, the down tubes, blah blah blah. All that stuff's cut out and ready to go. As much of it as I can weld on the bench, I will, and then slide it in here, and I'll weld this thing to that, and that crossbar, and this plate to that, and then I'll put it in and weld that to the chassis. So I don't have, I won't have it on the rotisserie for most of welding the roll cage in. But anyway, task for the day is the motor mounts, and then yeah, we'll get to the rest of this list here, which is ay caramba, there's a lot of stuff on this list. I'm gonna have to make my wheel of death to, like a wheel of fortune. It's like a wheel of put lights in the shed. Oh, that doesn't sound like fun. Get some fill dirt. That doesn't sound like fun. Raise the roof of the shed. Yeah, that's another one. Oh yeah, that muffler I gotta build. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, tons of stuff to do around here. A haul has to get done, but there's no timeline, so there's my problem. Okay, so I'm finished making all the pieces. And I machined that out to a clearance hole for this big old notchy here. That's part of BMW's genius. So anyway, that goes like that. It goes through there. I kind of marked it where the front was, sort of. And then this one goes on top, like that. And then I'll put a bolt and a washer on that. And then all of this will be solid. Right, this is bolted to the bed plate and the block. This will be all clamped solid, and then the rubber bushing sitting over here. This little guy. That's my bushing, which is off a 3 Series BMW, if I recall correctly. So, anyway, then we'll have mounts. And then I'll have no excuses to weld this frame and stuff on. But I'll come up with something. Okay, so I got these pieces all machined up, and not completely done. That one there was a piece of stock that I had. That was just whatever length it was. This one's cut to the right length. So I'll need to pop that one off and make it the same, but you see it's on the right angle, and that's where she's gonna live. So I got plenty of room in there between the, I mean not plenty, but enough. And I can move it around a little bit if I need to, but I don't think I will. So yeah, that's where it's gonna live. You can see that's gonna have clearance to the firewall. Not a lot. But this whole methodology here was to move the motor back as far as possible without having to get into the firewall. No real reason for that. Just it kind of worked out that in order to make the suspension geometry work, the only way I was going to make that happen is to push the engine back like, I don't know, 12 inches, something like that. So this the steering rack could be in front, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in the front that's going to crash into it, so it was going to be a giant disaster to move the motor back, and it didn't make that big of a difference in my weight and balance. It was like 2%. So I decided like the transmission tunnel was going to have to get a lot of rework, and so now this is all transmission tunnel, firewall, it's all stock. The suspension geometry is very different because I don't have the instant center. I'm pivoting off a single ball joint, which makes the articulation look better. It looks more like a 67 Mustang and not like a BMW. So the only downside is these are in a normal position. They're kind of on an angle forward, like 20 degrees instead of straight. But with the articulation point of the lower control arm to the upright and all the geometry to get the caster camber bump curve right, this is where the rack had to be. And so there was a lot of, I know it looks like I'm just making stuff up over here, but there's a lot of work in CAD to get everything where it had to be to make the suspension geometry proper, considering I'm using the stock M6 uprights, but changing the 4 ball joint setup to, well, 2 lower ball joints and a McPherson strut to single ball joint on the top and a single ball joint on the bottom. So it kind of changes all the geometry around a bit. So in order to make that work, this is where everything had to end up being. Was a little bit luck involved? Yes, it was. I also had the option, and one of my plans was to move the, if you look at the, yeah, if you look at the fender over here, I was planning on moving this wheel well forward like 3 inches. So I was going to cut it right there where that dotted line is and just shift this whole thing forward. That would help the weight and balance as well, but it turns out I didn't need to do that, and it would have been like noticeable that I modified it. And the 67 Fastback, it just has some classic lines to it, and I didn't really want to get in there and muss that up. So anyway, it all worked out. So anyway, motor mounts are where they are. Transmission fits inside the standard tunnel. You can see the steering rack is going where it's supposed to go. So now I just need to lock all this stuff down, spark it in place, burn it in as it were. And then I think I have to bite a bullet and, you know, start welding these plugs in and starting the roll, you know, at least tacking the roll cage, or at least, you know, not really tacking it, but getting the easily accessed points of the roll cage welded in. And then once that's, you know, all that stuff is welded in fairly decently, I can use it. I can use the rotisserie to rotate it around and get to the hard reach points and whatever. Like all the stuff inside here is going to be super fun. And I may chop this open and so I can get in there to weld it, because I have new pieces that came with the Dynacorn stuff. So yeah, so this is kind of a big milestone. This sets everything in place, and yeah, now I can move on from there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. There's a lot of cool stuff going on, fixing to be going on, I guess, something like that.